Let's see where we're at. So I just want to thank Vance and the whole system here for having me out here. This has been an amazing experience. And I want to talk to you a little bit today about my experience building Project Noah. So we're moving away from this notion of inspiration and getting people actually mobilized and engaged. And the reason behind that and the motivation behind that is to make sure the future is as wild as possible. So before I start, just a quick recap of my background, how I'm approaching this and how I'm tackling this. I studied molecular biology. I did genomics research in the lab for a while, ditched the lab, got into just general technology shenanigans and building products and services, hardware and software, and generating patents. And then I decided to go to art school at New York University at Tisch School of Arts and study design, technology, and art. And that's kind of all this stuff. That's my pathway that's led me to where I am today. So what exactly is Project Noah? Well, it's a mobile app and an online community for people to explore nature, understand the natural world, and just kind of get a feel for what's out there. You can think of it as a digital butterfly net. That was the thought experiment that drove me to kind of build this platform. The thing that I wished I had when I was a kid, if I could snap a photo of something, if someone on the other side of the planet could help tell me what it was, and all that data that I collected along with everyone else could be used and harnessed by people from around the world, teachers, scientists, kids, whatever it may be. I want to show you really quickly what it looks like. It's designed kind of in the spirit of these titans before us, the Darwins, and whoever you want to think about, whoever your kind of nature or science icon may be. I'd like to think that if Darwin had an iPhone and he was on the HMS Beagle going to Galapagos, he would download our app before he went there. But basically the way it works is you share your observations with wildlife in the form of this digital butterfly net concept. You can participate in missions, so these are specific data collecting tasks that the community creates, that scientists create, that organizations create, that schools create. And you have this notion of this location-based field guide. So wherever you are in the world, you launch the app, you can see all the wildlife that the community has documented where you happen to be. And the cool thing is like you don't have to know anything about nature. You know, you can come in and be like, this is a weird crawling bug on my laptop, what the heck is it? Or this is my favorite bird and I've just managed to catch it in Central Park. So that's kind of the notion behind it all. But you don't actually have to have a mobile device at all. I mean, you can do all this stuff, interface with it directly through our website. And so in many ways, we're crowdsourcing ecological data, if you want to use buzz terms. But realistically, what I'm most focused about is like building this really decentralized and engaging community that's learning together, that's unlocking the world together, that's exploring together. In order to do that, we're incentivizing people. This notion in this conversation around gamification and game mechanics, it's important. I think we can learn a lot from how gaming environments captivate us and make a lot of people spend a lot of time in them. And so we use similar ideas and similar thinking. So as you do things that are of value to the community, as you share observations, as you help other people identify species, as you create missions, as you contribute valuable things to missions, you earn patches, you earn recognition. We give you promotion through our community and through our networks. And you create data and you can do stuff with the data that you harness and collect through the platform. I want to give you some statistics and some numbers to kind of give you an idea of the scale. So we have over 220,000 registered members, over 25,000 students in over 1,000 classrooms. Collectively, the community has shared over 500,000 wildlife observations. And the observations, keep in mind, can have multiple photos attached to them. And so we've crossed over 1 million geotagged photos covering all 7 continents. And keep in mind, this is no bulk importing sort of process. We aren't pulling in feeds from elsewhere. What we're doing here is every photo that's been collected in Project Noah's community has been manually uploaded one at a time by our members from around the world. And so I think that's a really enormous achievement. We're stoked about that. And this is the first time we're actually publicly announcing that, so we're pretty excited. And then recently, about last year, we allowed our community members to create and launch their own Project Noah missions. And so the original set of missions were ones that I kind of created that I thought would be cool to get people engaged. And since then, we've seen over 2,600 missions from all over the world get created. From the social media side of things, we have our own megaphone. That's how we grow and kind of nurture our community. We have a big following on Facebook that's been tremendously helpful in getting our word out there. And from starting with 0 photos in our database, we've collected over 1.5 terabytes of user-generated data. All this work and effort has helped us because we've garnered a lot of press and attention. In fact, one of the first big mainstream articles that helped launch us was in 2010, and we were featured in El País here in Spain. And some of the original members of Project Noah who found out about us back then are still active in our community. And in fact, our #1 contributor of wildlife photos is a retired glider pilot who lives in southern Spain. He himself has shared over 7,000 observations. And again, each observation can have multiple photos. And he's got over almost 15,000 photos he himself has uploaded to the community. And so this sort of stuff has trickled through press, mainstream press, the Times of India, CNN, this sort of thing. Now, that's just kind of setting the stage and giving you an idea of what Project No is, how we're functioning, how we're working from a mechanical perspective. But really, like I hinted early on, this is about building an engaging community. And I want to talk to you a little bit about our philosophy and how it works. So what is the draw? Why do people want to participate in Project Noah? Well, there's several reasons. One is that there is no more worthy cause in fighting for the planet, building awareness, getting people engaged in protecting and preserving wilderness. That's one thing. The other thing is that we have this tremendously open and welcoming community. We don't give a shit what you know about nature. We don't care if you're an expert with many years in the field or you've never stopped to pay attention to a leaf or flower before. It's all fair game. We want you to join us. We want you to learn together with us. And beyond that, we have this worldwide channel. And what I mean by that, this is a platform for telling your story and your experiences with nature. Whether you're, have many years of experience or not, it doesn't matter. This is your way to get involved in that and become kind of like a storyteller for your local wilderness. We find ourselves in this very interesting and also challenging position, but it's also very exciting, is that we're smack dab in the middle between experts who have a lot of information and amateurs who don't. And the challenge from a user interface perspective and from a technology design perspective is, how do you provide enough value to both sides of that coin? We have to be as engaging and as useful for experts as we are for people who have never done this sort of thing before. And that's this never-ending kind of evolution that we're working on. And the one thing that we have to kind of bear in mind and always understand is that we all begin as amateurs. Whether you're a field biologist or a conservationist or an entrepreneur or an engineer, there was a point in your life, believe it or not, where you didn't know anything, You were still trying to figure it all out. And the question I always ask those people is, what were your touch points? Who was your inspiration? Where did you go for resources? Who taught you? Who was your mentor? And what I want to create are millions and millions of touch points for people anywhere with any sort of background to get involved and get incorporated and start doing this. Whether you're going to be the next Gaudi or the next Jane Goodall, nature is at the core of that, and we want to bring them into this community and get them start thinking and talking about this stuff. Curiosity is our currency. What I mean by that is that's what we value. That's what we want to trade in, and that's what we stockpile. And being a software engineer, startup entrepreneur, that sort of thing, I get asked a lot from financial folks, from investor people, venture capitalists and stuff. Well, what's your ROI, your return on investment? And I say, that's the wrong question. We're actually designed to optimize an ROA, which we call the return on adventure. And that's really what this whole system is about. And lastly, we have to embrace mistakes. And I think many people, especially with kids in the classroom, they're taught to what's right, what's wrong. It's answer B, it's not answer A, it can't be this, it's that. And I think it's just a horrendous way to get people engaged. I don't really care if you know the genus name of the bird that you saw. If you want to share it with me, I want to see it, because that's a starting point. And many people, I feel, we lose that in the conversation here, is that for us, many of the people who submit something, it's the first time in their lives they're actually stopping to do that. And if I were to just, slam the hammer on them and be like, that's wrong, you're not even on the right genus, man, that's horrible. They're not going to come back. We're going to lose that potential person. So let's talk about some of these people. This is Shakai. She's 13 years old from the Philippines, right? And she shared this photo with us. She drew the Project Noah logo on her face. She's got a pet lizard sitting on her shoulder. She loves just documenting nature, insects particularly. She's helping other people identify species. She's sharing her encounters, learning more about this stuff together. She's the future, right? Here's Liam, a 17-year-old kid from Georgia in the United States. And out of the 225,000 plus members in our community, this guy right here is our #1 most prolific species identifier. What that means is that he single-handedly has identified over 5,500 species. And what that means is when someone shares a photo from anywhere in the world saying, what is this? I need help with it, 5,500 plus times, Liam has answered that question. So when people ask me or tell me, kids don't care about nature, I laugh. Because the thing is, yeah, kids are online, kids are using technology, but you're not presenting nature to them in a captivating way, in a meaningful way. This is a language that they're speaking, this open, social, technological language, and we just aren't speaking to them properly. And what I'm trying to do with Project No is change that. And here's Sergio. He's a history teacher from Brazil. He's what I call the new face of science and the new face of discovery. Two quick stories. On the top right, he shared this photo of this interesting caterpillar. People were amazed by it. It's really a beautiful, kind of notable thing. No one could identify it. What the heck is that thing? And so he went down to a local university and asked the entomologist there and said, hey, can you help me identify this? She wasn't sure what it was either, and so they wanted to go out in the field and see if they could actually capture a specimen. So Sergio is a photographer, he's not a scientist, he's not collecting specimens out in the field. So we called that a close call. We weren't sure if it was something new, maybe it could have been, maybe if we found the specimen we could confirm it. Fast forward about 6 months after that, he shares this photo of this tree hopper on the bottom right. One of the first comments in his observation was from an entomologist from the Smithsonian who, not knowing much about Sergio's past or the close call with the caterpillar up top, said, well, I hope you grabbed a specimen of that because that could sure as well be a new species. And so again, Sergio didn't actually pick up the insect that they encountered. He's just taking photographs. So I reached out to him, like, this guy must be really bummed. He missed out potentially 2 opportunities to have a new species discovered. I mean, many scientists dream of that moment. And I'm like, Sergio, can I just send you a bunch of specimen containers? Anything you see when you're walking out there, just collect them and let's work with the Natural History Museum to figure this out. And he kind of laughed, but in his conversation with me, everything crystallized. What he told me is, Yasser, the reason why I joined Project Noah is because where I live in Brazil, there's amazing wildlife. And I want people to know that. Yes, it would have been amazing if I discovered a new species, I'd name it after my wife or my mom or whatever. But what I've proven to people is that there are things here where I live that have never been seen before. And that's exactly what we're trying to do, is he's becoming a spokesperson for his local wildlife. In the spirit of power to the people, like I said, not too long ago, we opened up our platform to let anyone create a Project Noah mission. And this was an experiment. I wanted to see where people could take it, right? And so we're seeing these kind of 3 avenues or pathways that people are taking with the creation of missions. There's one kind of notion of just like working together to collect interesting bits of information. One perfect example of that is this really awesome mission called the Animal Architecture Mission. So someone has created this mission to basically collect photos of examples of animal architecture from around the world. These are things that, the thing on the top left is a case moth case from Indonesia. I didn't even know these existed. That's actually created by an insect. It's not like constructed by a kid, paper wasps from Indonesia as well. And then, some ants that form these interesting structures from India. So just the amazing spider webs and nests and burrows that you see around nature. And then education is a really important part for us. And it's an area that we're really getting pulled into and where we're dedicating more and more of our time. So we have classrooms using, like I mentioned, 25,000 students, over 1,000 classrooms, using Project Noah to document all the wildlife on their campus, on their school site. We want to turn every backyard and every schoolyard into like a biological research station. And we're working with innovative educators. These 2 women on the couch in front of you are called the Bug Chicks. They're entomologists from the US, and they just went on a road trip across America to document all the interesting insects and film little vignettes about them so they can teach them to kids. They're using Project Noah along the way to share their encounters, but also to get people who weren't with them alongside on the journey to participate as well. And the other angle that we're starting to see emerge, which is very exciting as well, is this, using Project Noah as a platform for activism. One of our members in Colombia found out that there was a proposed hydroelectric plant that was supposed to be developed. And when he kept telling people this is a bad idea, it's going to damage and displace wildlife, everyone kept saying, what wildlife? What are you talking about? So he created his own Project Noah mission, and with a few of his friends are going out and documenting all the wildlife that they see in the area of where they are proposing to build this hydroelectric plant. And so this is one man. This is not an NGO with $1 million and a bunch of marketing materials. He's one man in Colombia who's trying to resist this sort of thing, and we want to be the platform that empowers that. We have all sorts of missions that have been created with partners from around the world. The WILD Foundation, the Charles Darwin Foundation, National Geographic. John will talk about the Great Nature Project, which we're participating in, and also with many of their BioBlitz over the past few years. And so that's a sampling. This is really just a sampling, and this idea of moving away from inspiration and being on a soapbox and preaching all the stuff that's important, all the needs of this and that. Let's give people tools. Let's give them an extension into doing this stuff instead of just talking about it. So from Indiana to India to Indonesia, our community is on the front lines. They're doing this. As they share their observations, we're sort of measuring Mother Nature's pulse because we have a feed of all these activities. When Bob sees a photo here or Joanne sees a insect there, those are coming in the feed. We're seeing them as they happen. And then just kind of winding down here and closing up, we use this terminology a lot, citizen science. Raise your hand if you've heard the term citizen science. I think pretty much everyone in this room is somewhat familiar with it. And it's a buzzword. It's very ambiguous. It means so many things to so many different people. And I just don't think it's the answer because it's built on this traditional and old school and I think outdated notion of science. Unfortunately, what science has become today is a destination. And what I mean by that is when I talk to kids, when I talk to teachers, they look at science as something that being a scientist is something that they might hopefully one day become with lots of years of effort and pain and struggle. right? Maybe one day, after many degrees and many years of effort, I'll become that scientist. I'll be able to wear that scientist hat. And I think that's just the most tragic thing, because we're born as scientists. This notion of curiosity. Science is just a methodology for asking questions, and getting answers. And you don't have to be, multiply degreed to do that. I want to really bring that back and make it important. These new tools that we're talking about, many of them were mentioned earlier on the previous presentation, they require new thinking. What I want to do is I want to inspire new kind of generation of organizations, of eco-entrepreneurs who have these philosophies, these methodologies, these beliefs deeply ingrained in their bones, in their DNA. I work with a lot of organizations that are trying to bolt these things on. But if you don't really believe in the notion of open and social kind of technology, it's very hard for you just to do it here and there. It needs to be deeply ingrained in your thinking and your philosophy. And there's always this importance to understand context. We lose context so many times. We are collectively trying to build this massive movement, right? The movements are built by people, and those people exist within communities, and those communities are just collections of experiences, this common consciousness. And if we can keep track of that, if we can make these strong, engaging experiences together on the ground that they can kind of fortify their relationships with and then kind of spread like wildfire, then we're onto something and we're doing really good. And then kind of lastly here, in this new spirit where we're kind of flipping the script, business, whether it's conservation or actual for-profit business too, has always been focused on accumulating as much value at minimal cost and investment. That's how it's always been positioned that way. It's always been functional that way. And what's happening now is that paradigm is completely shifting. What we're doing and what many people are doing, if you follow the open source software movements and things like that, there's this mantra about creating more value than you'll ever capture. And I feel as though if many more organizations and upcoming entrepreneurs and activists really believe that, embodied that, this world would change in a rapid fashion. And so, when people ask me, Yasser, how do you measure success of Project Noah? Is it the number of members? Is it the number of data points? Is it the number of events you get to speak at? Yeah, those are all cool things that I'm paying attention to. But kind of jokingly, the way I measure our success is by how many people get Project Noah inspired tattoos, right? And this is Dan from Canada, and he was the first person to get a Project Noah inspired tattoo. That's our iPhone app icon, and that's a real tattoo. When he sent it to me, I thought it was a joke, and he got mad that I didn't believe he tattooed himself. So in closing, we are building this vast green army of nature nerds, and we use that terminology with pride, that we are proud to be nature nerds. We're exploring ecosystems, we're documenting wildlife, and we're fighting for the planet. I think my wildest dream would be that at WILD10, when the next Jane Goodall or whoever is standing on stage addressing you all, and someone asks her, where did you get started with nature? What lit that fire? I'd love for one day for her to say, when I was in the Philippines, I downloaded this app that my dad told me about, and I started sharing photos of insects, and I just got obsessed. That's the mission that we're on. That's what we're trying to accomplish. And I'm open to all sorts of ideas and partnerships and collaborations. And if you like what we're doing and what we're up to, I'd encourage you to talk to me and work with us. Join us. Thanks a lot.